Assalamualaikum and hi to everyone. Today we are from Kopi O group who would like to present the next topic 6, content of 6.1 until the last one is 6.4. Okay, let's begin. Okay, first of all, I would like to introduce my group member. The first presenter is me, which is Ainur Farisha binti Muhammad Shahizam, and the next one is Oh Sin Sin, and the third one is Dinisha, and the last one is presented by Devendran. And then let's go to the next slide. Okay, my group member and I will be presenting this topic 6, which is population growth and economic development. Basically, population growth is the increase in the number of people in a population. Okay, let's move on to the next slide. Okay, in the 6.1, the basic issues, which is population growth and the quality of life. Okay, they examine many of the issues relating population growth to the economy development. Okay, by looking at the historical and recent population trends and the changing geographic distribution of the world's people. Okay, after explaining and doing the geographic distribution and basic demographic concept, we present some well-known economic model and hypotheses regarding the causes and the consequences of rapid population growth in contemporary developing countries. And next one, they explore controversies surrounding the significance of the population factor in general and these models and hypotheses in particular. And the lastly is they evaluate a range of alternative policies and options and that developing countries may wish to adopt to influence the size and growth of their populations, as well as ways in which industrialized countries can contribute to a more manageable global population and resource environment. And then, the problem of population growth is not simply a problem of numbers. It is a problem of a human welfare and of development as defined in the chapter 1. Okay, and rapid population growth can have serious consequences for the well-being of all of the humanity. Okay, let's move on to the next slide. Okay, about the major issues. Okay, the first one, will developing countries be capable of improving the level of living for the people with the current and anticipated level of population growth? To what extent does rapid population increase make it more difficult to provide essential social services, including housing, transport, sanitation, and security? And the second one is, how will the developing countries be able to cope with the vast increases in their labor force over the coming decades? Will employment opportunities be plentiful or will unemployment levels soar? And what are the implications of higher population growth rates among the world's poor for their chances of overcoming the human misery of absolute poverty? Will world food supply and its distribution be sufficient not only to meet the anticipated population increase the coming decades, but also to improve nutritional levels to the point where all humans can have adequate diet? And the fourth one is, will developing countries be able to extend the coverage and improve the quality of their health and educational system so that can have access to adequate healthcare and a basic education at least? Okay, the fifth one is there a relationship between poverty and family size? And the last one is the inexorable pursuit of increasing affluence among the rich more detrimental to the global environment and to rising living standards among the poor, and then the absolute increase in their numbers. Okay, next I would like to pass to my group member.
I'm in charge of the population growth, the past, present, and future. So as the world is approaching the population milestone of 7 billion people, we can observe from this table when the people first started to cultivate the food through the agriculture since 12,000 years ago, and the estimated world population was not more than 5 million people. While in the beginning of the Industrial Revolution, it tripled out to 728 million people, and it also increasing following by the years. So when the world entered the 21st century with over 6 billion people, and it estimated world population will reach 9.2 billion in 2050. So we can observe from the figure 6.1 show how rapidly the total population grew after 1915 in comparison with the 2 centuries before that. So if we really portray the magnitude of the population growth, most of which has been in the developing country, both as a percentage of the total and in terms of the solid number. As we can observe, by 1750, the population growth rate has accelerated to 0.3% per year. So by 1915, the rate has again accelerated to 1.0% per year. As we can see today, the world population growth rate remains the historically high rate of about 1.1% per year, but the rate increase is growing. However, the population growth rate in Africa is still extremely high, 2.3% per year. So based on this, we can observe from the figure 6.2%. As we can see, the populations of the Asian and the Pacifics are decreasing from 61% to 58%, Europe 11% to 8%, Northern America is remaining the same, 5%, and Latin America 8% decreased to 7%, except for the Africa from 50% increase to 22%. Hence, here is the reasons that influence the population change, which has effect the famines, disease, malnutrition, epidemics, war, and also the conditions that results in a high and preventing the death rate. As a result, human mortality is now lower than any other points of human existence. So its decline in mortality results from the rapid technological advance in the modern medicines and spread of modern sanitation measures throughout the world. So particularly between the past half century, that's a result in the unprecedented increase in the world population, especially in the developing countries. So coming to the next is the structure of the world population. So the world population is very unequally distributed by the geographic regions, by the fertility and also the mortality levels and also the age structures. So for information, more than three-quarters of the world people live in developing countries, while fewer than 1% in four live in an economically developed nations. Hence, we can observe from the figure 6.3, and each ball represents 1 million of the inhabitants. Fertility and mortality trends. The rate of the population increase is quantitative measure as the percentage yearly net the relative increase in population size due to the natural increase and also the net international migrations. So we can observe from the table 6.3, and it's got lists for 7 countries that experienced insignificant fertility decline between 1970 and 2009, and this because having a modern vaccination campaign against the disease such as the malaria, smallpox, yellow fevers, and cholera, as well as the proliferations of the public facility and clean water supply, improved nutrition, and also the public educations have all worked together over the past 3 decades to lower the death rate by as much as 50% in the part of Asia and Latin America, and by over 30% in much of Africa and also the Middle East. So for the example, for 1950, the life expectancy at the birth for people in developing countries average 35 to 40 years, compared with 62 to 65 in the developed world. So this can be considerable process that has been made on reducing under the mortality rates. Coming to the next is age structure and dependency burdens. So the population is relatively young in the developing world. Children under age of 15 are more than 30% of the total populations in the developing country, while 17 in developed nations. So when the youth dependency ratio is high, thus the workforce in developing countries must support almost twice as many children as it does in the wealthier country. When the percentage of the population under age 15 to 64 more than age 50 and over, the main problem in the developing country led to the more low population growth and the old age dependence. So in general, the more rapid of the population growth rate, the greater the portion of the dependent children in the total population. And this is the more difficult it is for people who are working and support those one-offs. And the phenomenon of the youth dependency also lead to an important concept, the hidden momentum population growth. That's all for me. I will pass to my teammate. Thank you.
The hidden momentum of population growth is its tendency to continue even after birth rates have declined substantially. Population growth has a built-in tendency to continue, a powerful momentum that, like a speeding automobile when the brakes are applied, tends to keep going for some time before coming to a stop. In the case of population growth, this momentum can persist for decades after birth rates drop. There are two basic reasons for this. First, high birth rates cannot be altered substantially overnight. The second and less obvious reason for the hidden momentum of population growth relates to the age structure of many developing countries' population. Figure 6.4 shows the population pyramids of all developed and developing countries and case of Ethiopia. What is population pyramid? It is a graphic depiction of the age structure of the population with age cohorts plotted on the vertical axis and either population shares or number of males and females in each cohort on the horizontal axis. Each pyramid rises by 5-year in age intervals for both males and females. The steeper bottom rungs for the developing world as a whole, in contrast to a very low-income country such as Ethiopia, reflects the large declines in population growth in lower middle-income developing countries over the past quarter-century and particularly in China. For developed countries, in the contemporary period, the population in middle cohorts is typically greater than that of young cohorts. This is partly, but certainly not exclusively, viewed as a transitional feature of a period in which women have been delaying births until later in life. From the Ethiopia pyramid expressed as share of population, young people greatly outnumber their parents. The age scale in this case is found to the right of the figure. When their generation reaches adulthood, the number of potential parents will inevitably be much larger than at present. It follows that even if these new parents have only enough children to replace themselves, for example 2 per couple as compared with their parents who may have had 4 or more children, the fact that the total number of couples having 2 children is much greater than the number of couples who previously had more children means that the total population will still increase substantially before leaving off. The next subtopic is demographic transition. What is a demographic transition? It is the phasing out process of population growth rates from a virtually stagnant growth stage characterized by high birth rates and death rates through a rapid growth stage with high birth rates and low death rates to a stable low growth stage in which both birth and death rates are low. The demographic transition attempts to explain why all contemporary developed nations have more or less passed through the same 3 stages of modern population history. The 3 stages of modern population history. Stage 1. Before their economic modernization, these countries for centuries had stable or very slow growing populations as a result of a combination of high birth rates and almost equally high death rates. In stage 2, begin when modernization associated with better public health methods, healthier diets, higher incomes, and other improvements led to a marked reduction in mortality that gradually raised life expectancy from under 40 years to over 60 years. The growing divergence between high birth rates and falling death rates led to sharp increases in population growth compared to past centuries. In stage 2 thus marks the beginning of the demographic transition, the transition from stable or slow growing populations first to rapidly increasing numbers and then to declining rates. In stage 3 was entered when the forces and influences of modernization and development caused the beginning of a decline in fertility, eventually falling birth rates converged with lower death rates, leaving little or no population growth. Figure 6.5 shows the demographic transition in Western Europe. Before the early 19th century, birth rates hovered around 35 per thousand, while death rates fluctuated around 30 per thousand. This resulted in population growth rates of around 5 per thousand or less than 0.5% per year. Stage 2, the beginning of Western Europe's demographic transition, was initiated around the first quarter of the 19th century by slowly falling death rates as a result of improving economic conditions and the gradual development of disease and death control through modern medical and public health technologies. The decline in birth rates in stage 3 did not really begin until late in the 19th century, with most of the reduction many decades after modern economic growth had begun and long after death rates began their descent. Figure 6.6 shows the population histories of contemporary developing countries, which contrast with those of Western Europe and fall into two patterns. In the 1950s and 1960s, stage 2 of the demographic transition occurred throughout most of the developing world. The application of highly effective imported modern medical and public health technologies caused death rates in developing countries to fall much more rapidly than in 19th century Europe. At stage 2 of the demographic transition has been characterized by population growth rates well in excess of 2% per annum in most developing countries. At stage 3, we can distinguish between two broad classes of developing countries. In case A, modern methods of death control combined with rapid and widely distributed rises in levels of living have resulted in death rates falling as low as 10 per thousand and birth rates also falling rapidly to levels between 12 and 25 per thousand. These countries, including Taiwan, South Korea, Costa Rica, China, Cuba, Chile, and Sri Lanka, have thus entered stage 3 of their demographic transition and have experienced rapidly falling rates of overall population growth. But some developing countries fall into case B of figure 6.6. After an initial period of rapid decline, death rates have failed to drop further, largely because of the persistence of widespread absolute poverty and low levels of living, and more recently because of the AIDS epidemic. Moreover, the continuance of still quite high birth rates as a result of these low levels of living causes overall population growth rates to remain relatively high. These countries, including many of those in sub-Saharan Africa and the Middle East, are still in stage 2 of their demographic transition. Though fertility is declining, it remains very high in these parts of the world.
Hi, my name is Devendra son of Murthy. My mention number is 267658. Today I'm going to present about topic 6.4, which is the causes of high fertility in developing countries, the Malthusian and household models. The Malthusian population trap. The Reverend Thomas Malthus put forward a theory of relationship between population growth and economic development in nowadays. Malthus therefore contended that the only way to avoid this condition of chronic low level of living or absolutely poverty was for people to engage in moral restraint and line of the number their pregnancy. Modern economists have given a name to the Malthusian idea of a population inexorable force to live at a sustainable level of income, so they have called it low level equilibrium population trap, or more simply the Malthusian population trap. The basic Malthusian model can be illustrated or can be explained by comparing the shape of position and curve representing population growth rates and aggregate income growth rates when these two curves are each of them are parallel against level of per capita income. Next is the Malthusian population trap curve. Okay, now is graph explanation on figure 6.7 previously. First is figure 6.7 depicts the basic ideas. The x-axis shows the level of income per capita. The y-axis shows two rates of population growth and total income growth. The second is explanation is the rate of total income growth is greater than the rate of population growth. Income per capita is rising. This corresponded to moving to the right. Along to the y-x-axis, rate of total income growth is less than the rate of population growth. Income per capita is falling. Moving to the left along to the x-axis. Third explanation is on the vertical axis, we plot numerical percentage changes, both positive and negative, in the both principal variables under the consideration total population and aggregate income. Number 4 explanation is the rates are equal, income per capita is unchanging. Then we can explore the shapes of population growth and growth of income to understand potential implication of this relationship. Okay, next is continuing part 6.4, population growth. When income is very low, below $250 per year at purchasing power parity, nutrition is poor that people became susceptible to fatal infectious disease, pregnancy and nursing become problematic, and ultimately outright starvation may occur. The minimum level of income per capita is reached, population begins to grow, eventually reaching a peak rate, perhaps at least 3 to 4% per year. The population growth rate begins to fall until at last very stable population is reached, a growth rate close to zero. The total income growth becomes greater as the economy develops and income per capita rise. An economic reason for this positive relationship between income and population growth assumption that saving very positively with income per capita. The last part for Malthusian population trap. The main reminder of this chapter is on changes in economic institution, economic power in household models, and cultural norms to reduce fertility and maintain population growth below income growth, and eventually to achieve population stability. Families often follow local social norms about fertility and tend to model on their own behavior to their community. If the income per capita were a little less than the total income curve will be above the population growth curve, and so income per capita will be rising. According to the modern day now, non-Malthusian poor nations will never be able to rise much above their subsistence levels of per income capital unless they initiate preventive checks, birth control on their population growth. Thank you.